Hi, loves, and welcome back to our Monday interview show. I am so excited, thrilled for our very special guest today. Today, we have Dr. Threadgill Edgerton, who is also known as Dr. E, and she has written this incredibly wise and interesting, fascinating book on Enneagram, the Enneagram system, which he will explain to us today. I was brand new to this system and instantly fascinated. Enneagram Made Easy. Explore the 9 personality types of the Enneagram to open your heart, find joy, and discover your true self. Dr. E, thank you so much for being here with us today.
I am so happy to be here with you today, Kimberly. Just
So,
delighted.
Dr. E, we connected. It was like the universe brought us together in the lobby of a hotel when we were both there for the Hay House conference. And it was this instant connection. I could feel your heart, I could feel your energy. And I just said, whatever this woman is writing about, I want to know. I want to read her books. It was like a light went on.
I agree totally. I came back and I told my team, I said, I met the most amazing woman and we just had this instant connection. And I can't wait to be on her podcast because I'll get to see her again and we'll get to have a great conversation.
And I feel, first of all, there's so much language that the way that you speak, Dr. E, and the way that you write is so resonant with what everything I believe in. You're talking about the true self, which was the subject of my last book. You're talking about opening the heart, which is the subject of my next few books. So it feels like though, we are coming together and rising up because it's not just one of us that's going to help this collective, that many hearts have to come up. And you have been dedicating your life to this rising energy, this rising collective consciousness of humanity. You have this vision. Tell us about your vision of what society could be like, Dr. E, as more of us turn to the heart, as more of us turn to this self-awareness and this work.
Well, Kimberly, one of the interesting things about us as spiritual beings in human form is that we forget that we're really here for each other. And in reality, if everyone remembered that, we wouldn't have the chaos and confusion and the suffering that we have in the world. If each individual person, rather than focusing just on what we want as individuals, if we recognize that there is a way to open our hearts and to understand that we need to embrace and love one another. And one of the things that I teach that many people are not aware of is that we have 3 centers of intelligence. It's not just our brain, it's not just our thoughts, but there's the wisdom of the head and the wisdom of the heart. And then, of course, the wisdom of the body, which
Yes.
culminates in our instinctive center in our gut. And sometimes the choices that we make, you can see where we bypass the heart.
Yes.
We'll have a thought, we'll make a decision, we'll think about it, but we won't run it through the heart center, and we won't wait to see whether our intuitive center says that's a good way to go. That's what I call the full body yes.
Mm,
My mind experiences it, my heart feels it, and the wisdom of my gut says yes, this
mm.
is the way to go. That is a missing piece for much of humanity. One of my mentors, Russ Hudson, talks about this. He says, why be 1/3 of a person? Why go through your life just being 1/3 of a person, living out of 1/3 of your intelligence, of your being? So the
Yes.
Enneagram brings that into play, into focus, that we have these three centers and they're all designed to help us to make loving, kind, rational responses to
Mm,
life circumstances rather than irrational, reactive, unkind actions.
mm. I love this so much, Dr. E. It's so alignment with everything that I truly believe. And this
Mm.
wisdom that you're bringing forth. Before we get into more details around your system, you mentioned it's pulled from many different wisdom and spiritual and religious traditions from around the world. There's this convergence around the heart and tapping into the true self. And as you mentioned, when we're one third of a person, we see what's happening in society today where there's massive confusion, there's massive separation. So many people say to me, Dr. E, I don't know what direction to go in. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't even know when I'm hungry. Right. And so then what happens is we keep going outside of ourselves. We follow what everyone else is doing on social media. We're just running around in circles. And the fulfillment and the love and the connection, all the things that we really want in life, it's like we're going through these motions and living very unfulfilled lives. So, what you're creating here, what you're giving us is a tool to heal that and not just get from point A to point B, but actually come in with this wholeness that is our birthright.
That's correct. It is so much our birthright because actually, um, I define the Enneagram in terms of energy, and so there are 9 different points on on the Enneagram, and each of them has a distinct energy, and we're born with one of them being our dominant point, the point that we lead from. And what's so important about that is, you know, I laugh because I call this the blueprint to your soul and the operating manual that you wish you had been born with.
Mm,
But whenever you find it, then you don't have to sort of stumble around in the dark trying to figure out who am I and what's my purpose and why am I here. You go deeper and deeper into the unfolding of coming home to your authentic self. I say to people all the time this concept of creating new versions of yourself. No, let that go. In reality, stop trying to be a version of anything.
yes.
Be authentic self. You were created the way that you are for a reason. And whoever you're looking at thinking that you need to be that person or you need to embody that person's persona, no, that's not you. It's like
Mm,
trying to put on someone's clothing that are too big or too small. Um, you are enough exactly as you are, and you have a path that you can follow that will lead you home to being comfortable with number one, loving yourself, incredibly loving yourself, and two, recognizing that you belong. You
mm,
know, never, ever, ever should we let anyone determine whether or not we belong.
mm,
That's our choice. That's our decision to make. And in reality, unless you come home to yourself, you can never experience the true sense of belonging because
hmm.
if you're not connected to yourself, you can't really connect fully with anyone else.
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
nothing fills that hole as much
Oh,
as we're trying to create more money or success or followers. It's
yeah.
just, it's like, it just feels like you're still paddling around on the surface.
That's correct. There's the horizontal plane that we all have to navigate here in the world. But part of our life's journey is really to integrate and go deep and understand the vertical plane, the
Mm,
integration of all parts of ourselves, the integration of our mind, our body, and the integration of self love, which is not pampering, but really seeing ourselves, flaws, beauty, confusion, sometimes undecided and conflicted between our heads and our hearts, and accepting and embracing all of who we are, letting all parts of ourself know that they belong, that they serve
mm,
a purpose, and releasing, it's really important, releasing false narratives that we create about ourselves and about others, letting that go. That's how you get back to a sense of truly understanding that you belong. You belong to yourself. You belong in the world. You have a place. You have a purpose, and you have incredible power should you choose to step into it.
mm. Well, Dr. E, it sounds so vast and immense. A lot of a lot of the things that hold us back have to do with fear, right? And
Yeah,
so one of the things you talk about in your book is self-preservation. And there's also many different ways that we can enact control because we're trying to play it safe, right? Whether that's I'm going to stay in this really safe relationship, or I'm just going to try so much at work because I'll just stay in this very cushy place I can be. Um, and just keep ourselves small and all these different pathways. So, what would you say to someone that says, well, I want to listen to my heart. I know I'm not playing to the fullest ability, but I'm scared, or this is what feels familiar to me. And so, I like to feel like I'm in control of my schedule in all these different ways. How does someone break out of that? Let's say they've been living that pattern for 20, 50, 60 years or more.
yeah, true. Very true. I look right at that person and I say in very, very clear language, there is no growth inside your comfort zone.
Mm,
There just isn't. If you want to stay in your comfort zone, then you can stay there, and you can stay there afraid of being outside of the comfort zone. But if you want to grow, if you want to really live life, not just exist, but truly live, and especially if you're curious about your purpose, your contribution, what were you put here for, or what can you do to make the world a kinder, gentler place, then do it afraid. Step out of your comfort zone and do it afraid, and recognize that all you need in terms of resources is the capacity to let go of the fear and to just see one step ahead, and to take that step. And once you recognize that you can take that step, then you can begin to move forward. But the whole notion of living your life inside of a safe little bubble and being small in that little bubble is a recipe for disappointment. It is the life not well lived that makes you feel the most that it might have been a life wasted.
mm, mm.
Get out of your comfort zone.
I love that. And that's a direct message. And when you were using the word bubble, Dr. E, I can't help but think about this song that Paramahansa Yogananda sang and taught us, which was, I am the bubble, make me the sea, right? Of this little world. But once that
Yeah,
pops, you realize this potential, this vastness of the true self, of who we really are. And yet, so many of us cling to our little, safety mechanisms.
exactly. Marianne Williamson talks all the time about how we are not afraid of being powerless. We're really afraid of our own power
Right.
and how important it is to own our power and to step into it. I think that this is particularly important in this season of time that we're in right now when it comes to women. Looking at what it means to step into our power and looking at people who identify as non binary and, of course, men, also understanding that there is a time for the what I refer to as the divine feminine energy to really rise and to show up in the world. And we're there. We're at that place right now where every woman, every human who supports the divine feminine and who wants to see the evolution of all of us as a species, that wants to see us elevate our consciousness, it's time to pay attention and to step into our power
Mm.
and to find out what our purpose is. We all have one. I talk about the world as a mosaic, and each human being is a bright, shiny, brilliant, beautiful tile in this mosaic. And there are places where the mosaic is not quite complete. And it's because there are
Mm.
people who haven't stepped forward to put their tile in place. And
Beautiful.
once you put yours in place, then everyone around you that their tile belonged in that section, then they can fit their tiles in as well. But we
Mm.
don't have to all be alike. We need to be able to shine with the uniqueness of our authentic selves and to love and embrace our own authentic self and the authentic self of those around us.
Mm. What a beautiful perspective shift, a framework to see us working together as one art piece. Because one thing, Dr. E, and I get goosebumps when you're talking about coming into our power and helping each other rise up. There's the other energy, which is competitiveness, judgment, which you talk about throughout your book. And so, it's just these energies which make us look out through our eyes and think that we're competing with other women in particular, or we judge if someone's going a different path. And they actually hurt us. They keep us small
Yes.
when we engage. And that's part of what you're talking about with the shadow side of different personality types and the different points. Can you speak about kind of going more into the light side and how that can shift us away from these darker tendencies?
Well, it's one of the reasons that I love that I was gifted the finding of the Enneagram because it takes, it gives me a way to actually help people see that, you have this personality archetype that your whole being is, created around, and you have a choice of how that energy is going to grow.
Mm,
You can either use that energy for good or you can use it for chaos, confusion, and disruption in
mm,
a bad way. Uh, so, to be able to know what your energy is, your dominant point is, your Enneagram type, is to look at the composition of your personality structure and to begin to understand how you move through the world. Once you understand that, then you can see the high vibration and the low vibration of your energy, and you actually have something that you can point toward. The shadow side of every human being is something that has to be looked at, has to be accepted, and has to be worked with. But
mhm,
when you've done that work, where are you landing? what does the high side of you look like? And how
Mhm.
do you maintain a high vibration in terms of actually caring not only about yourself but about others. So I think it might be useful just to demystify that a little bit. There are 9 different types on the
Yes.
Enneagram, and if we just run through them very quickly, um, I'll just say I'm 8, 9, and 1 are body types.
Mhm.
Um, we are prone to action, kind of like to get things done. But the 8 energy is strong leadership, charge the hill energy. The 9 energy is the peaceful, let's bring us all together. Don't disturb my peace and help me create peace. And the 1 is sort of the moral compass, do the right thing, care about the suffering, the pain, the confusion, but we can actually do something about that to heal humanity if we all come together and just do the right thing, act with a strong moral compass. 2, 3, and 4, when we look at the high vibration of those types, they're heart types. They reside in the heart center where our feelings are. And what I can tell you about 2, 3, and 4 is that in the heart center at point 2, you have beautiful humans who really live to not only be open to receiving love, but to give love and to put as much love as they possibly can out in the world. At point 3, you have people who are called the 2s are the givers, the 3s are the achievers, and at point 3, there is this quest for success and for there's a lot of ambition and there's a lot of wanting to be the best. But the high side of that is it's also wanting to mentor you into being your best and to know that to be successful and to define success in compassionate and loving ways.
Mm.
At point 4, we have the holders of the beauty in the world. We have people that have deep empathy and compassion for the world and for themselves as well. And they want to be unique, and their struggle is sometimes just around holding the pain and suffering of the world, but what they do with it is they're the creatives. They bring beauty back into the world because their experience of suffering is transmuted into something creative and
Mm.
lovely and wonderful. Um, and then we have 5, 6, and 7, which are the head center. And at point 5, we have people who can look at the world and see all the ways that things are connected.
Oh.
And with that beautiful gift, they can actually, focus and investigate and understand how to really embody knowledge in a really deep way. Not this surface horizontal stuff, but really a deep integration of how what happened in the past is connected to what's happening in the present and where it may go in the future. And
Mm.
that's the gift of the mind of a 5. And at point 6, there's this radiant energy of love and loyalty and preparedness, of structure, of being able to understand that you have to have ways of doing things and understand how to do them and to be prepared for what inevitably might go wrong.
Mhm.
And when 6 energy is in the picture, you can pretty well rest assured that at the high vibration at 6, if something goes wrong, they're prepared to deal with it. And they've
Okay.
prepared not only for themselves, but for you as well. And then we come to point 7, where we have the enthusiast. And at point 7, you have people who Their energy is about joy and freedom, and they bring that energy with them into the spaces where they navigate. And the beauty of the energy at point 7 is all about innovation, and we can do it, and we can do it differently, and we can also do it joyfully, and we can do it with a level of freedom and excitement and passion, that it's an energy that is unmistakable. A 7 can walk into the room and lift the whole vibe of everyone that's there.
Mm,
So it's beautiful to see these energies, but we have all 9 of those energies within our own being.
mm,
And one leads, one is definitely our home base, but we can do a much better job of learning how to play with all of those energies within ourselves.
mm. Thank you so much for that overview, doctor. And in the book, of course, you go into much more detail. I have a
Yeah.
question. We do have a central point, but it shows if you guys are watching this on our channel, if you're listening to this, I'm holding up the diagram on Dr. E's book on page 4. And let's say this one is your lead. Are there two other points? I think you call them wing points or sort of secondary
So
energies.
keep holding that up, so I'll explain something. On either side of your dominant point are something that you call wings. So
Ah,
point 9, nines have an 8 wing and a 1 wing. So those are the types that kind of help to flavor the way that your particular dominant point shows up. I always refer to it as your dominant point is the energy or the steak or the main course, but the wings are the seasoning that you choose
ah,
to put on it. So,
got it.
some people like teriyaki, some people like a little extra olive oil, so the wings are the seasoning, but the lines and the arrows that are on that diagram, those are your stress uh, and growth points. So if you look at eight,
Ah,
eight has a line that goes to 2. That is the growth point for an 8, who's a really kind of tough leader, strong, solid, resilient. But what's behind all of that at the highest point at 8 is the most innocent, pure, soft, beautiful heart. And then the 5, from 8 to 5, you see another line.
yes.
That is the stress point. So when an 8 is stressed, they will go to the stress point of 5. And if they go to the low side of 5, there's a lot of anger and frustration and resentment. But uh, and it's sort of like it can be very vengeful, but if an 8 can pull themselves up to the high side of the energy of a 5, where they become focused and they look at what all of the details and the real facts are, then they can soften their hearts and move over to their growth point and go to 2, where they're embracing empathy and compassion and love. So it's
Mm,
a journey, and each of us, when we begin to navigate that journey, um, unlike, personality assessments that give you a bunch of behaviors, what the Enneagram gives you is the why you do what you do. And then when you start looking at that, you're on that journey for life.
mm. I love this, Dr. E. Let's bring this more to life. And I'll share a little bit more about me, Dr. E, and maybe you can, for our listeners and our viewers, kind of give some information who know me quite well. So I'll say I read through your book. Yeah. I read through your book, Dr. E, and the ones that sometimes it's hard to self diagnose ourselves or place ourselves, but the ones that definitely I felt like, okay, this is me somewhere in here were the heart ones. And I'll share with you that I did have a core wound as a child, feeling not seen or heard. And I experienced abandonment loss quite early, not literally, but my mother had to go back to work when I was about 2 weeks old, and she was traveling very far and commuting. So I think very early on, I sort of felt abandoned, left on my own, and my parents are great people. They were trying their best, of course, but there was just a lot of hustle, right? So I was left on my own a lot, and I was a latchkey kid. So there was that core wound. And so I definitely associate, you said there's the wings. I don't know if it's helper or achiever. So early on, there's always this one to help, and that's where I've created my community with a free blog, which came into books, and the company was, I want to share this. But there's also this aspect here, Dr. E, of achieving where I had to be number one in the class, right? I had to be perfectionist, which later then developed into eating disorders, wanting to be thin and managing my body. So there's definitely an aspect of that. Um, and I definitely see the idealist in there where I want things, or as I'm interpreting it, to see things, how things could be when we're living from the heart. So just for those little seeds, Dr. E, or ask me any questions, where would you diagnose my Enneagram is?
So here's what I would tell you is that I will never tell you what your Enneagram type is because I would be hijacking your journey.
Ah.
Part of the journey is discovering it for yourself. It sometimes
Mm.
breaks my heart when people come to me and say, somebody told me that I'm this and now I'm really confused. And
Oh.
the challenge is that the the finding of your type is so important to how you land in it and
Mm.
how you proceed on that journey. Now, you've given me a lot of information that demonstrates some things that I can have you look at. And I would definitely say look at the heart center types, which is look at 2, 3, and 4. That's the heart center. And remember and pay attention when you're reading, and what you might do um, is you might get Enneagram Made Easy on the audiobook and
Mm.
listen to it. So sometimes just reading it and then hearing it, it's like, oh my God, how could I've not seen this? But listening to where you go when things aren't going well for you. So, for instance, when something really upsets you, what does that look like? What does it look like? What are your behaviors then?
So I think if something happens at work, let's say,
Mhm.
um, like something's upsetting or something's behind, I think I go into doing mode. Like, let me do more, let me try to fix this. Um, just kind of, yeah, like doing, like things can feel a little bit more hurried, and my voice will talk faster. Um, and also when you're talking about the heart-based types, there's that inherent sort of guilt or shame, then I may turn it on myself, or I didn't do enough, that beating up of that, I call myself a recovering perfectionist. So I would say those are some of the tendencies that still arise.
When you're beating yourself up, what is, and we call that the inner critic, what is the inner critic saying to you? What are you hearing?
Mm, so it's back to that doingness that, as a child, was always like, let me do something. Let me show the worth. Let me show the achievements. Let me show the 100 on the test or whatever. So the inner critic will say, you didn't do enough.
All right. Stay in the center Okay, and continue to look at those types. Now, there's something else that I'm curious about in terms of your wanting to maybe have people like you. How important is that to you?
Um, I would say it's pretty important. I like to have um, circles, and I'm quite introverted, Dr. E, but I care, whether it's in this, circle of friends or the parents or out in the world. I think it's definitely validation, approval. Um, Not as overtly as, some people that I may come to mind, but I think it's definitely important. And if there's any sense of like, oh, there's something going on here, I really want to fix it, reach out, like smooth things over. I'm not someone that likes to hold grudges or keep things unsaid. I like things worked out and out in the open for sure.
If someone, let's say, rejects you, and you've tried very hard to actually be in relationship with that person, um, how far are you going to go to try to win that person over? Or will you look at it and say objectively, peace out?
Well, Dr. E, this is perfect example of this because I think I've had this tendency to be in relationships longer. And my ex, my last relationship before my husband, might have just drifted along, not being super close. I went into, kind of fixing mode. I think like I can be the one to reach this icy heart. I can be the one to fix this situation. And as I've shared here before, my mother passed away really suddenly. And it was sort of this epiphany of, from her diagnosis to when she passed from cancer, it was only 6 weeks. So it was sort of this awakening of, wow, anything can happen at any time. And it sort of jolted me into looking at that relationship and saying, we're not getting closer. This isn't really what I want. Um, and then I moved out, some time after that. But for to answer your question, I think that to myself sometimes. And then I went on to find the love of my life. Thank God. Grateful every day for my husband, John. But there was that, keep trying, let me figure this out, that went on far longer, perhaps, as an
Okay,
example.
yeah, that's an excellent example. Um, I will say this: I I hear heart center, heart center, heart center, and it's interesting because the heart center types show up in very different ways. Twos are really more prone to the people pleasing, trying to do everything for someone, trying to help them, trying to make them happy. And I also hear the ambition. Threes are the ones that tend to be very ambitious. And those 100s that they can bring home and say, look at this, I did it. I knocked it out of the park. It was me. I got the number one slot. That just makes their hearts leap, particularly when people appreciate the effort that's been put into achieving something. Um, the On the other side of two, where you have one, that's the perfectionistic one, the idealistic one, and that's where you find the energy of wanting to fix other people.
Mm, mm,
Really wanting to make the world a better place,
yes.
just to do the right thing. And I can help you be better, whether you want me to help you or not. I have to own that. That's where I sit. I live in that spot. So my point on the Enneagram is one. So I can definitely hear some elements of that as well. Um, However, it's just in your early exploration, stay on that side of the Enneagram.
Mhm.
One, two, three. Even look at four, because at point one, there's a connection to four. That's the stress point. So,
I
as a
see.
one, using myself as an example, when I am stressed, I will go to point four. And at point four, if I'm at the low vibration, I'm a hot mess. I am in my big time melancholy. My pity party is so pretty that nobody can out pity party me in that moment. And I laugh about this because I need an audience for my pity party. It's absolutely no fun if I am in my room crying my heart out because I'm hurting and my husband can't hear me. It's like, okay, I'm going to take this pity party out to the hallway so that he can hear it, that I'm really upset. Because what I want is to be seen and heard and loved and
Mm.
cared about in those moments. But when I was first learning about the Enneagram and trying to find my type, it was interesting that when I heard the description of the four and that melancholy and that sadness, and that feeling like I'm the only person in the world who cares or sees how hurtful this situation is, I had the inner ding that said, oops, you know what that is. You know how that feels. And then on the high side of one, knowing that moral compass, integrity, doing the right thing, those are things that are so very important. So I could put the two together. So as you're continuing your search, and here's a question for you. What do you look like when you get mad, when you're angry?
Mm. Sometimes it's internal,
Mm-hmm.
and then sometimes it can be that faster, like my speech, this throat chakra can get sharp.
Okay. Okay. So, do you have a little bit of a switchblade tongue?
I mean, it's so here's a question because it's definitely mellowed and become gentler, which I think is my true self is a much more gentle feminine energy. So,
Hmm.
doctor, let's say the environment we're in creates tendencies, right? Like I still wanted my mother's attention and validation, so I would show her the test because academia was so favored in my family, then I would get that attention. But now that I've healed so much of that mother wound and within myself, I don't feel so achievement driven, right? And I healed eating disorders. I never weigh myself. I don't think about things in that same way. So do is the core Enneagram type sort of how our soul came in, and it's also shaped by environment, or as we heal from our environment, the true self, can we then sometimes think, oh, I'm actually this Enneagram type, right? Because
Oh, I
my
love this.
anger shifts.
I,
Yeah,
I love
it
this.
shifted.
Yeah, I love that you're asking these questions because this is where the big confusion, the big disconnect comes in for people in trying to find their Enneagram type. The your Enneagram type came in with you. You know, I have three children. Do you have any children?
I have two sons.
Okay. Do they have the exact same personality?
They're very different.
So you understand that you can have two children being raised in the same home who have very different personalities.
Yes.
So something
Mm,
happened there. They came in with some differences.
yes.
There's that sweet baby that, when you go to pick them up, they're just laughing and they're cooing at you. And Sometimes that's the first one, which makes you think you want to have the second one who's saying, excuse me, I don't know what my brother told you, but everything's got to change around here, people. I need more attention, and
Yeah.
I'm going to and scream till I get it. All right. So we have these different personalities, and they are at our core. So what I always tell people when you're looking for your Enneagram type, go back to who you were before
Mm,
all the therapy and the healing and the sort of inner work and the self realization. Go back and look at your core self, your raw core self, because what happens over time is, to quote Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And so
yeah.
when we learn that certain things are not working for us, then we may change our approach. We will change the way that we try to move through the world. We recognize that there are things that need to be healed, and then once we heal them, we come out as kinder, gentler human beings. We come out as um, the authentic, sort of innocent human that we came into the world to be before life happened. So, at the core, that personality archetype does not change. You just heal the wounds. You understand that you may have a fire in the belly if you're a body type, and anger is in the body
Mm,
type. Um, but you know that anger doesn't control you. It doesn't own
mm,
you. It doesn't run the show. There are times when anger is appropriate, when to be angry is something that we have to look at and say, yeah, I'm angry. However, knowing that you're angry and then taking the time to have an intentional response to anger is different than being unhealed and being reactive and constantly triggered.
yes.
So that's why this work is so powerful. There are so many people that will never see a therapist, but can learn how to do this inner work and to find what's on the inside. And Father Richard Rohr says that we have a responsibility to go down deep inside ourselves and to find what's there, but to come back up and out and to take responsibility for all of it. So on
Mm,
your journey now, what I'm saying to you, my prescription here is for you to go on the inside and find your slightly younger self and look at the reactions, the responses, the emotions, the feelings that you've had to work with over time to be as whole and healed as you are in this moment,
mm.
and to revisit some of those feelings and tendencies and behaviors. So it would be like looking at how you've tended to respond to situations over most of the time.
Got it.
It may be gentler now, but it's still the same stuff
I
that was there
see.
earlier. You see that?
I do, Dr. E. And so, practically speaking, if someone is interested in the Enneagram, and I'm holding up here again, let's just say, I'm not assuming, but let's just say I'm a two, right? So, would you suggest to create that, higher self awareness and the wisdom coming in? You would read two, you'd focus on two, but you'd focus on the wings either side, and also you call it the growth and the the
Based on the
challenge.
stress points.
So
Yep.
you'd focus on like 5 points to read more deeply about.
Right. So yes, and that there's one other element of the Enneagram that is really, really important work, and it's the subtypes or the instinctual stacking. You mentioned earlier self-pres.
Yes.
So, in addition to our dominant point, our wings, and I teach that we're all bilingual. One wing may be a little like I'm a one with a very heavy two wing, um, but we have both of the wings,
Yes.
and we have these stress and growth points. But we also have um, these instincts that we have to be aware of, and they are self preservation, social, or sexual one on one, which is about intensity
Mm.
of connection. And when you look at your main point, your home base, your type, the instincts will sometimes help you to find your type if you really just can't see it.
Ah,
So, a person who is self pres has different priorities from a person who is social, from a person who is sexual one on one. And
okay.
you want to look at those three things because it's going to influence the way that you show up as a two or a three or a four or
Ah,
whatever the type
so
is.
it's another layer over any of the points.
Yes,
Got
absolutely.
it.
Yeah. And you have all three of those instincts, just like you have all nine types within you. However, one is the one that's right there on top, the one that you get to easiest. And then there's one that's in the middle. And so you can kind of, that flips up when you need it. The one that's on the bottom is the one that we call, the one that we don't have clear line of sight to. And it's important to do some work around that if you happen to not be have much of that instinct that's alive in your being. So that's more of the deeper work. But
Ah,
just start with the nine types and look at those stress and growth points. I would say that's more important to look at that than the wings.
got it.
Some Yeah, more important to look at where does your energy flow and go? Where does it flow and go? When it's not going so well, what does it look like? Does it go when you read the description of a two? When a two has gone to the stress point, or what we actually call levels of development, is acting from a lower level of development. What does that look like, and does that sound like you? Um, when you are operating at an average or a high level of development, your higher frequency, what does that look like? Does that look and sound like you? And that's the way I advise for people to engage the journey.
And what a journey it is, Dr. E. This is an incredible manual. And Yogananda, who I often quote from, says that one of the greatest, let me paraphrase here, one of the greatest pathways to progress is introspection. Right? We have to know ourselves. We have to turn that searchlight in, like he says. We want to dive deep. We need to understand more deeply how how we tech to make more of a positive impact on the planet. So thank you so much, Dr. E, for sharing about your amazing book, which once again is called Enneagram Made Easy. And just for any of you guys watching this, I'm just going to show how these charts are laid out. And I love the boxes. I love the organization of the book, Dr. E, because you can really reference and you can call out the authentic self, the shadow self. It's so funny because I was reading the book early this morning, and I know you said not to self-diagnose others, but there was a box that really reminded me of my husband. I'll just say that, and I screenshot it and I sent it to him, and he said, "What is this?" And I said, "Does this sound familiar? I'm reading this Enneagram book," and he's like, "I wanna read more about that." So I know we don't wanna do that to others, but it was just so funny. My husband and I always kind of send things back and forth, and he works at home too. He's over there in the guest house, but it's like,
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be happy to work with you and your husband a little
oh,
bit to sort of, because otherwise, sometimes when, like I said, I don't want you to hijack his journey, just like I'm
yes.
not hijack yours. But I can spend some time with you, giving you some little pointers on how to get there. And I have a wonderful surprise that I'll share with your listeners. Um, the individual the inner work journals are coming out May 21st.
Oh,
So
amazing.
once
Perfect.
you once you figure out what your enneagram type happens to be, then you can order your individual type inner work journal. And we're launching the authentic self inner work journal club in June, where people can come. I want to bring people together in community so that, ones can talk to ones and twos can talk to twos, and I can have
Ah,
prompts, and then you can go talk to the fours and learn more about the fives. And so I think that that's going to make the journey easier. You know, we we grow and we learn in community, and inner work really is very difficult to do by yourself
mm,
because you fool yourself. You know,
yes,
you can tell yourself and rationalize and, not release false narratives and
yes,
make up stuff and speculate. But when you work in community, um, the connection that we already have to one another becomes more tangible. You
beautiful.
know, we're already connected, but when we come together in community, we have that tangible experience of the connection.
Mm,
And for me, that's part of my life's work, is to
mm,
bring people together in a spirit of love and connection and belonging.
mm. Well, so beautiful, Dr. E. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your heart with us. Thank you for your beautiful book. Tell us more where we can learn about your work and joining your communities and also getting your book.
Well, you can find everything you need to know about me on Deborah Edgerton. It is Deborah. The not the more current way of spelling it. And Egerton is Egerton. People love to put D's in it and extra G's in it, but it's Egerton.com. And everything that I'm doing is located on the website. There's an Enneagram quiz on the website that I invite all of your listeners to just come in and take the quiz.
Wonderful.
Hold the results lightly. Remember, our ability to be truly honest with ourselves is somewhat limited. So if there's four multiple choice, and it says, I am sweet and kind, I am mean and stingy. Everybody is sweet and kind. Isn't that interesting? So you have to be able to answer honestly, and like I said, hold those results lightly. Whatever result you get, then look at that particular type and read about it, because it's just to, maybe by a process of elimination, get you in the right neighborhood, but it may not give you the exact right house. So I
Yes,
invite listeners to come and do that. Let your husband do that too. Um, and let him find his own type.
you're right. Quizzes are
Yeah.
so great. They're so fun and they're so
Yeah.
accessible. So I
Yeah.
love that, Dr. E. We will link also directly to Dr. Edgerton's site. on the show notes. So in
Great.
case you got a little, and now here's the book again. You'll see this beautiful bright blue color, but in case the spelling got off, you can go over to mysaluna.com and we will link directly there. Once again, Dr. E, thank you so much for all your amazing work. I cannot wait to dive in deeper into what I believe is my area, as well
Well,
as my other points that connect. So I think this is such a powerful tool, and I love the way that you write. And there's this
thank
deep
you.
connection and wisdom really pouring out of it. So thank you once again so much, Dr. E, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was just a joy.
Oh, Dr. E, I feel your heart. I love you so much. And my loves listening to this or watching this, thank you so much for joining us. As always, please check out the show notes and we will be back here Thursday for our next Q&A show. So till then, sending you much love. Take great care of your unique, amazing self.